I'm just going to add one comment. We have heard a lot of numbers. We do not own the Civic Center. We are technically leasing it back from the group of investors who own the certificates of participation. Our agreement is such that we will have to meet our annual payment of about $1.27 million a year for 30 years. At the end of 30 years, we will own the Civic Center. We also have a 10-year lock-in period for the current interest rate we're paying on those certificates of participation. Thank you. The current effective interest rate is 6.113%.
I appreciate last time we had the meeting over at the golf course, we were talking about the timing of the lease that we have on the Civic Center here. I had a question about the lease itself. Particularly, I was looking at the Washington State Code for this lease that we have, and it says that we're not supposed to pay more than the prevailing rates for a comparable space for our lease payment. So being that a couple weeks ago I went downtown thinking about renting some space here, and the going rates are $24 a square foot or whatnot. I had just a question for you guys, and that was, have we explored that option? I know we've explored a lot of different options, but are we in compliance with the code for Washington State that requires them to basically charge us a price equitable with what else everyone's paying in the area? Is that one of the...
I'm not familiar with that, so I'm going to write it down and make a note of it. What is it again? A prevailing...
It's the same code that basically required us to calculate how much we could borrow for debt. It's in the RCW 35, section 42. I can just give you the paper.
Well, yeah, but just tell me the theme so as I write it down because I'll have it.
It says lease of city land for building purposes and lease back of building by city. That's the name of it.
That's not something that I've ever heard of before. So
yeah, I hadn't either, so I figured I'd bring it to your attention because I know you guys are looking for options. Yeah, so I figured, you know, hey, look, I don't know how much we're paying, but if it saves us a few $100,000, that might change the. I know you didn't write it up this time, but it might change your math a little bit.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. Other questions? Aaron, who's next?
Ellie is next.
For those of you who don't know me, I happen to be the person to whom the mayor alluded a couple of times. I am the person who questioned the cost that we pay for the Civic Center. I am very concerned that we did overpay for this property, and we are in a 30-year contract on it.
She's not the only one that has this concern, by the way.
Mayor, I am a little puzzled that the message I think I heard in your response to Shauna's question and the other response about the ability to refinance seemed to be as if the city is working on that. I am puzzled not only because I haven't heard back anything on the progress with either a real estate appraisal or work with the attorneys, but you know, you mentioned when my husband talked about that he looked into renting property in downtown DuPont because he's a business owner here. And he knows the rental rates in downtown DuPont. And the current rate we're paying for this, because this is a lease back, this is one of those rent-to-own situations, the current rate we're paying here exceeds that significantly. I am puzzled that you have not heard of that statute. Again, this is Washington State statutes. They are cited all over our lease agreement, and they state that the rental that the city or town enters into, I'm going to quote here, which rental shall not exceed prevailing rates for comparable space. If we really have attorneys looking into this, how come you're unaware of this situation? Why are we not pursuing this option? But this is surprising to me. I have a job and kids, a Girl Scout troop, and I can come to this language and pose a question in my spare time, and we supposedly have a full-time city administrator and staff and attorneys, and you're saying you're exploring the option, but we're seeing no results. This is millions of dollars. This is not something we can just kind of brush off.
I agree. And I apologize, I'm not up on that part of the state statute. But like I said, the lease of city land and the lease back obligation, RCW 3542, I will read that and I'll ask my attorney to read it and look into it. I'm assuming we're probably in compliance with it because the attorney hasn't raised it as a red flag. But I don't know about it, and so I'm telling you, I've never heard of it, but I'll look into it.
No, honestly, the economic realities, it's just impossible for us to be in compliance with this. The rate here for this building is about $35 a square foot. Prime real estate in downtown DuPont is $24. We're not talking about a difference in cents. And for the attorneys to not have brought this up to your attention means they're not looking at this. So how can we ask, to give us this illusion that you're working on this and let's pass this temporary property tax increase, which, on September 17th, there was a town hall meeting where each council member was supposed to give us their reasoning for why they supported the temporary property tax increase. None of them mentioned that they are looking into, in the meantime, renegotiating these terms. So are they looking into it or are they not?
And with that, I'd like to turn to Scott, have him walk through the agreements for you, and then Nancy will take it from there to explain the financing issues and particularly the COP approach. So, Scott.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a relatively straightforward transaction. You might ask then why do I need a 45-page document then if it's so straightforward? But let me start with the overall scheme of things, which is a lease-leaseback. So by definition, I've got a lease from the city, or the city is going to be leasing to Panattoni, or a firm designated a development entity formed by Panattoni. That development entity is then going to lease back completed facilities to the city. The city will have an obligation to pay rent upon the completion of those facilities, and then also has an option to purchase the facilities at a fixed price, fixed declining price over the term of the lease. So the first document that you have is the lease from the city to Panattoni, and that's a relatively straightforward document. Rent commences about 18 months after the document is signed to allow them time to construct the facility. Ground rent payments are then made from Panattoni to the city, or to the I'm sorry, is that better? Yeah, I'm sorry. Payments are then made, rental payments are then made from the lessor to the city. The leaseback arrangement is a more complex document, and it's basically structured in 3 distinct phases. First, there's an obligation on the part of Panattoni to construct the facilities at a fixed price, which is established by a budget that's attached to the agreement. And as Jerry has indicated, that budget still has a couple of moving parts to it, and it's not finalized, but we're down to, I would say, within 1% of the total cost of having everything resolved in the budget itself. So the first sections of the lease deal with the construction of those facilities and what those facilities are supposed to look like in terms of plans and specifications. Then there is a section in the middle of the lease that deals with how an option on the part of the city to have the project financed through certificates of participation, so that the lease will then be assigned to a trustee who will then pay Panattoni a fixed price for the lease, pay off their costs. And at that point in time, your landlord, so to speak, for the city, for the facilities, will be this trustee on behalf of the holders of these certificates of participation. Then the remainder of the lease deals with the city's ongoing obligations after the building has been completed and the obligation to pay rent commences. And basically, at that point in time, the city has the complete obligation to make rental payments and make all the payments associated with maintaining and operating the building as if you were the owner of it. And there's virtually no obligation on the part of the landlord to make any payments whatsoever with respect to the facility. So at that point in time, it's really the city's expense. Fairly straightforward, but it does take a few pages to actually document that. Yeah, there is one added complication with the way that the lease is structured. The city is not able to incur a debt in excess of its debt capacity at the current time, and the debt capacity is slightly less than the total cost of the project. So in order to overcome that, what we've built into the lease is an initial phase, which is everything but the City Hall building, and then an option on the part of the city, once your debt capacity is increased at the beginning of next year, to increase the scope of the project to encompass both the public safety facility and the City Hall. And that election will be made in January, and it's anticipated, based on the numbers that everybody's working with, that your debt capacity should be sufficient at that point in time to finance the entire project.
And the delivery cost of the City Hall is fixed now, so that is all part of the fixed price. We just tell them that that's really part of it when your debt capacity gets big enough to pay for it.
Has there been a foreclosure on the property in DuPont's downtown business district? What is the story on that?
Mark, you going to cover that, since you probably have firsthand knowledge?
Well, I said am I on? It died again.
They can use their table mics as well.
No.
It's going to record.
All right, to answer your question, a foreclosure notice was put on all the buildings. The reason for the foreclosure was that the owner of the properties, he wasn't making his payments. He tried to negotiate with the banks so that he could reduce his payments. And the bank said, no, the only way we will talk to you is if you don't make payments. Well, he stopped making payments, so the bank would talk to him. It's the dice that he rolled, and right now they're talking to him, but we don't. It's still it's still under review whether or not they're going to allow him to finance, or if they're going to put the entire building project up for auction. So That's how it stands at the moment. And just one more thing, though, to take the fear, because when you hear foreclosure on businesses, right, downtown DuPont is just not going to close up and go away, because everybody that is a tenant in DuPont is under contract, and those contracts are honored. So we're here for a while. It's just we're going to find out who the next owner of the building is going to be, all right? Thank you.